Hey everyone, I was just taking a look at your little Discord assignments, which was of course to do little spheres of different materials, and a lot of you did pretty decent ones. Just looking up real fast. I really liked what Maggie had going on there. He had some rusty ball things. Those are probably better than what I could do. No, it's pretty good though. And then we got some people doing metal stuff and different things like that. Once again, though, when it comes to materials, the most important thing to focus on is just the reflectivity of the material, which will give you the contrast range of the material. So obviously, the shinier something is, such as a metal sphere, a lot of you did metal spheres, and I think most of you did a pretty good job with it. You all seem to understand that the contrast part is the most important part. So anytime you have a metal sphere, it should just be reflecting the world around it. I'm not quite sure what world this would be in or what room, but you should always feel like you understand a setting anytime you see a metal sphere. So let's see, where's another one? Like this one, it looks like there's a bunch of windows around the room. Anything like that, that usually gives a metal feel. So it kind of looks like an art gallery or something with this gray, maybe some kind of gray wall, lower wall thing, and then like a concrete floor. Who knows exactly? But you should always have that in mind anytime you do a metal sphere. And in fact, if you want to get super good at all textures, you should actually have that in mind anytime you do anything. So even if you're doing a low reflectivity material such as skin, you should still be thinking at least just a little bit about what the room is, because that can help give your image just a tad. It's always going to be reflecting a little bit of room stuff, so you can think about it. But I guess it's not as important. So anyway, I'm just doing this quick little stupid live video for you guys. So excuse me if I'm rambling, but for the skin one, I think the only thing you were missing here is just actually looking like a sphere. It just looks like a cutout circle of some skin. There's like a little bit of darkness in here, but it doesn't necessarily feel super sphere-like. I think that's because of the edges and everything. It just looks like a bruise on like a very flat 2D circle. But anyway, this one you don't want to put too much surface detail. You can see I actually mentioned the wood stuff, so wherever I talked about it, there it is. The only thing to watch out for is to making sure things aren't constantly kind of crisscrossing. See, like all these little ones. There needs to be a very good flow with all these knots and things. So that's kind of simple stuff for wood. I already mentioned it. But reflectivity is the only important thing that really is what you should focus on. That's what's going to make all of your spheres look good. Obviously, if you're trying something like lava, then you have to think of them as having distinct properties such as generating light and everything themselves, which makes it a very unique material to do. And then you get some interesting materials like this. Once again, I mentioned it to you. The only thing you mentioned or that you lost in this one, line root, was just having this extra shadow in here and this little bit of highlight. It had that setting highlight. Obviously, you don't have the wood table, so I guess technically you wouldn't have to have it. But if you look at your one, once again, it looks a bit 2D. You didn't quite capture that core shadow that kind of comes around here. See that? See how it gets really dark? You can see all the room reflections. You included this one, which is actually a room reflection. It's like a shop light maybe, or like a window. Can't really tell. I think it's a shop light. But you can see like there's a wall over here. There's a couple windows on the wall. So all these reflections, just remember that's the environment you're looking at. So that makes it a little bit easier when you remember that stuff. But anyway, oh yeah, odd boy. I was gonna mention this glass. In my knowledge, this may not be 100% accurate, but in my knowledge, glass is, you can approach it the same way as a metal sphere, except you flip it so it's upside down. That sounds stupid, but I'm pretty sure that works. Think of it like 100% reflectivity, except it's like negative 100% reflectivity. So it's like you take a metal ball and you flip it upside down. Let me see if this works. Hold on, I'm gonna try this. what do I got? I got a quick little empty workspace here, but I got a circle. I'm trying to speed things up for you guys. Alright, so I'm going to try to quickly make a metal sphere reflective ball, and then we'll see if we can do a glass ball too using the same thing. So it'll be a little bit of an experiment. I'll get back to you in a second. Alright, so here's a quick metal ball. I spent a couple minutes making it. Nothing too special, it's very rough. But you can at least see that there's kind of an environment there. Maybe I was thinking maybe some kind of either factory or classroom industrial setting. It's got those overhead kind of bar lights with just a bunch of randomness in the background. But hopefully you can get some idea as for what the setting is. I think if we flip this upside down, we should get something like a mirror effect, but we'll see. Not a mirror effect, that's stupid. This is already a mirror effect. I mean, we should get something like a glass effect. So let's try that out. So I'll just copy this, and let's see, hopefully this will work if I flip it. Transform, flip horizontal, flip vertical. There we go. Okay, so right now it looks a little bit weird, but that's because we have to account for potentially some actual aspect of bounced light also coming in. So maybe just, I guess since we have these 3 lights, we'd have to actually do 3 lights, because light sources will still affect it. So maybe if we did something like that, let's go to our airbrush here, lock the transparency, just a little bit of nonsense like that. That might start to look more like a glass thing. How else can we do it? I feel like we need a little more darkness in some area, maybe just around this bottom, just a little bit. And maybe a touch more of like these strong speculars just around random areas. Just like a little bit of light being bounced around in the glass. You never know. I don't know. Glass is complicated. If there's any imperfections, it might reflect the light in different spots. You know, you might get a couple random various reflections. Okay, that could possibly work. Probably more random reflections around where the actual light would be. Okay, I think it's a little bit like glass. It's hard to say. Okay, if we really want to make it look like glass, we'll have to go back to the shadow. Oh, let me take off the transparency. And actually make the shadow have a bit of a transparency to it. A bit more like that. And that is how you really get some glass looking effects. If the shadow has an interior core, that's actually kind of a bright spot. Yet it still has a little bit of shadow around the edges. Well, regardless, let's just pretend we're fine. So there's an example of potentially the difference between a metal ball and a glass ball. You can definitely see all I did was flip it, and add a couple little light speculars, and the shadow obviously helps a lot. But I feel like that's pretty decent kind of effect. Obviously you can incorporate colors and whatever the environment is. But this whole little trick of just inverting a pure reflective surface vertically, I think it works. I think it works reasonably well. I don't know. Maybe not. Anyway, while we're on this, so that kind of goes over all of this purely reflective, shiny metal stuff, and as well as the glass stuff. But let's go back to the materials that really matter to us, because you got to think about what materials you actually need to learn. And obviously for most of us, we're not going to be painting purely reflective stuff or glass stuff very often. Mostly we're painting stuff like skin and fabrics and just boring metal that's not super reflective. So that's where you really need to be doing your surface ball textures and practicing these little studies as much as you can. And I think for things more like that, let's get back a simple ball structure here. All right, there we go. Make a new layer. And I will just do this one quickly without even speeding things up because it shouldn't take more than a second. So there, that's like the most boring little ball you can make. The highlight did not work that well. It kind of looks like there's a weird wobbly spot in here. I don't know why that's... The airbrush does not seem to be covering it right. But that's fine. Who cares? So the next... This is leading into our next challenge. So you might practice one of these, one that's more reflective, one that's less reflective, and just make sure you're really focused on the reflectivity levels. How matte is it, or how shiny is it? That's the most important part of every material. Obviously, we can quickly switch into a more reflective material if we wanted by bumping up the contrast a bunch. Actually, let's just see if we can do that. Effects, tonal control. I think it's under, we can just do brightness and contrast. If we crank up the contrast, well, I guess we'll leave it bright. This really shows off our saturation though. And now we can actually just go in here and add some actual speculars now that we've established some level of very brightness. Ooh, we can even bring them into a much lighter color if we wanted to. So there you can see two different reflectivity levels. I don't know what this material might be now. It just looks like a shinier plastic maybe. Before it was a dull plastic, now it's a shiny plastic. Actually, most plastics, well, no, I guess it'd be fine. Anyway, aside from that, leading into the next assignment, and I will be posting these in the little assignment part of our Discord. But here I made these little, I don't know what you can call them, little different-sided objects for you guys. Because it's important to understand how to use this material ball to help you get good at painting most things. And most things are not going to be spheres. They're going to have different planes and different shapes to them. So if you do a material like this, you should be able to then take it and let's see, you got to line up where your planes are. So this plane might be facing this way. And you should be able to take it and make it into a very structured geometric sequence. So let's see, we got this plane. You got to use your 3D brain. Like, which way is this plane kind of comes from, like this spot. We can simplify it into this brighter tone though. It might be a bit too bright. Something more like this will look good. And then you can just kind of go around saying which each one is. This one will probably catch the reflection of the ground. So it might be this color. Oops, I forgot. I should have probably masked these out first so I didn't get this. I'm being very sloppy. Okay. And once again, just using your brain. You're not going to have anything that's not already on the sphere. Every color you need is already on the sphere. It's just a matter of picking it correctly. Now, I don't consider that quite enough. It looks okay like this, but ideally, we want to turn off that layer and actually make it look pretty because this looked like crap. So you could just use your standard brushes. Make it look a lot nicer. Use whatever brushes you like. For the record, I made this exercise, but this is my first time actually seeing how it works. Ooh. Gotta make sure we capture this. This is gonna be a good one. So for like this one, this corner can actually be darker than the plane that's facing below next to it. Because it's more so facing the direction in between. So you can add maybe little hints of lighter colors like this. I don't know why that's so hard for me to do. Maybe you'll learn to add in like different little corner effects to make it look extra pretty. Who knows? The power is yours, etc. But there's a lot of potential for different aspects and different levels of exploring. That's for sure. Okay. Well, that's part of the fun of it. So, anyway, that's going to be the exercise that I'm sharing with you for just the upcoming couple weeks until I get a chance to do a different one. But I will be posting these little diagrams in the chat, so you can check those out and download them and make your own little attempts at different surfaces. Just remember, all the information you need for these is in here, but you need to think about, you can't just pick anywhere like in this triangular area and be like, oh, okay, just anywhere in there. You need to think about which way this plane faces and which point on this ball represents that. So, for instance, this one, you'd have to draw like in your brain, like an arrow coming out of there. An arrow coming out of, like every random aspect. Just kind of understanding which point faces which plane. It's not that complicated though. I'm sure you'll be fine. Once again, when I like to do a shadow, it makes it super easy if you have a dry brush, because all you do is make a little spot and then just blur it out this way. It's kind of a nice thing. Okay, I'm not going to do the last one. You understand how this works, so you can mess with this. It might be a fun exercise. You might learn a little bit more about just rendering things a little prettier. Because I guarantee you, if you can do this, if you can do a ball, and you can then translate the ball into some kind of geometric shape, then you should be able to paint anything. And anytime you paint something more complex, like a person, you start with this level over here, this simple level of kind of geometry, and then you blend it, if you need to, into slightly more ball-like form. But this is more useful to you, trust me. This one on the left and the one on the right, these are where you're going to improve your skills for coloring. Alright, see you guys.